Hello, everyone. This is Whitney Will from Star Hearth Astrology, and today I'm going to be talking about Sagittarius season. In this video, I'll go over kind of the big themes, I'll go over the smaller transits, and I'm going to do it all in a discussion with my friend Melissa Johnson. Melissa is also an astrologer. We met in graduate school. We both have degrees in counseling psychology and are therapists. And so I thought it would be fun. She has a Sagittarius stellium. So I thought it would be fun to invite her onto my YouTube channel to go over just the bouquet of different things we're dealing with in Sagittarius season of 2021. So yeah, Melissa, why don't you introduce yourself, your work, and kind of talk about your approach to astrology or your journey with astrology?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me. So currently I am doing most of my work psychotherapeutically with weekly clients. I do leave like 1 to 2 spots a week open for astrology readings. My approach for my natal chart readings are more from an evolutionary astrology perspective. So in like true Sag fashion, I really zoom out, look at the big picture of your soul's intention for incarnating in this life, past life themes, karma, all of that in like a very big picture, soul focused way.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll put all of the links to her work in the description of this video. So yeah, you can find her work. So I'd like to just kind of jump into Sag season. And Melissa, I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of like the big themes and storylines of the season, because I almost like I don't want to minimize Sagittarius at all. And I'm not doing that as a sign, but it just feels like in Sagittarius season, we're getting like the close of stories that started before it and the opening of stories that extend beyond it. And I'm just feeling really like this kind of like bridge quality of Sagittarius season this year in particular.
Yeah, especially how the South Node is in early Sag right now. So right when we enter in, it's like this like closing feeling in a way.
Yeah, right. So the South Node being at about 1 degrees of Sagittarius at the beginning of Sagittarius season means that the planets, right, the Sun and Mercury close behind it, when they enter Sagittarius season, they're going to be on the South Node, which tends to minimize the expression of the archetype, or maybe minimize is the wrong word, but kind of simplify or spiritualize.
Yeah, I've had a few clients recently with their sun in early Sag, late Scorpio. And I mean, the South Node just passed my sun at 2 degrees Sag too. So I'm really in this transit personally. It's always a little bit tricky to look outside of a transit that's like really close to home, I think. But just gauging off of the clients that I've seen too, it seems to be this like really emptying out on, you know, as the sun being the ego from like more of a psychodynamic perspective of the organizing principle of the psyche. It's like this emptying out of ego structure, identity, kind of just to let, I mean, for me personally, I look at it like to let my soul kind of just take the reins, and like it's less about all of this ego structure that I've built up in my life until now, kind of like a removing of masks and layers and hats and all of that.
Yeah. And I feel like that's such a potent descriptor of eclipse season, right? Because Sagittarius season begins right after a Taurus eclipse, but it's just a couple days, right? So we've got the Taurus eclipse that happens in the very early hours of Friday the 19th. And then the sun goes into Sag on the 21st. And we're right in eclipse season that extends for most of Sagittarius season. And yeah, I find whenever we hit eclipse season, I always kind of return to the archetypes of like, okay, what what does it mean? What do eclipses mean when we are losing the sun and the moon for a period of time? And this season in particular, what I've come to is, right, the sun, as you said so eloquently, the organizing principle of the psyche, and the moon, this kind of connective tissue to the physical world, get removed. And those are both, they're translators and mediators and filters of the deeper archetypes into the human realm. And when they disappear for a little bit, we get kind of raw, unfiltered stuff.
Yeah, I've been feeling that. I mean, we're recording this with the eclipse happening just tonight, basically, or early tomorrow. Yeah, I was thinking about this eclipse in particular, how, you know, the nodes are still in Sag Gemini, but it's the first one in the Scorpio Taurus axis.
Yes.
And how it is still a very, very prominent, you know, like our ancestors would gauge eclipses based on, you know, visually looking up into the sky. And this one is a visible eclipse, even if the nodes are out of sign. Yeah, it feels really strong. And the connection to Algol, the fixed star, I'm also seeing that a lot in like the media, that, like, you know, demon star, kind of this, like, you know, maybe more nefarious energies are kind of at play at the moment. And yeah, that with the filter being gone, with the light of the sun and the moon kind of blinking out, it's like, yeah, if you're not owning your energy, something else is. So not to be like doomsday about it, but it feels a little, you know, tricky out there right now.
For sure. And I think, right, I mean, astrology can get a little doomy anyway, because it's, you know, it's all speculation with archetypes, but this one in particular, yeah, it feels, it's not necessarily doomy in this hopeless way, but its conjunction with the most violent of the royal stars, Kaput Algol, there's more violence and volatility that I think is also being kind of underscored or also brought in the Mars-Uranus opposition that just completed, because there's just so much energy. And right, I mean, thunderstorms happen because there's a huge buildup of tension and something needs to be released. And so we have lightning, which yeah, it just feels like there's like a lightning quality.
Yeah, and this kind of like more demonic, if you will, quality isn't necessarily bad, right? It's like it could be a clearing out of darker or more, more shadowy energies. Like it makes me think of the Astro World thing that happened.
Yeah,
with all that, like, just how there was all this like demonic imagery with the promotional stuff and all of that. It's almost like so on such an obvious level, you know, not literally like a whatever, you know, there's conspiracy theories saying it's like was like a devil ritual. I don't, you know, probably not, but yes, on another level, like, yeah.
Right. Things can be, you know, maybe not like literally true, but archetypally true.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And I think, right, this eclipse, and we're spending so much time on it, but I think it is really important because this is how we're entering Sagittarius season. It's a lunar eclipse on the north node. The moon is closer to the north node, even though the nodes haven't shifted signs yet. So the nodes are still, as we said, at the very beginning of Gemini and Sag, the nodes move backwards. So they're about to ingress into Scorpio and Taurus. And so we're getting our first eclipse in the Scorpio Taurus axis. And the moon in traditional astrology is exalted in the sign of Taurus. And right in the sign of Taurus, she's kind of the most connected to the physical realm and our material needs. And I feel like after we've spent 18 months in Sagittarius and Gemini, things have become so theoretical. It's almost like we're feeling this deep hunger to reconnect with the world and our bodies. And then when we have an eclipse, she disappears and we kind of feel how far away we are from that. And then we get the December 4th eclipse, the final South Node eclipse, solar eclipse in Sagittarius. And that will kind of be this final 6 months of being able to purge out what's holding us back in that area, at least the way I'm seeing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a preview right now into next year, into the nodal shift of like this. I think it's going to be like a kind of literal shadow purging on a collective level, right? With the South Node in Scorpio, and then the reconnection with the earth and the feminine and sustainability and all of that with the North Node in Taurus. And also kind of like I think with the traditional ruler of Scorpio being Mars and then the ruler of Taurus being Venus, like this, some kind of healing or balancing on the gender polarity too, as a collective.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I was just, with Venus in her shadow period, about to go retrograde at the very end of Sagittarius season. I was revisiting kind of her retrograde in Scorpio, which happened 3 years ago now. And that was like kind of like the heyday of the Me Too movement. And so I think, with the South Node coming back to that, we'll have more kind of secrets and reconciliation happening. And also, right, we can't separate the nodes moving through Scorpio and Taurus from the way that they're going to activate the Saturn Uranus squares and the way so many of the eclipses fall in aspect to one or both of them throughout their whole journey through those signs.
Oh yeah, so this is the first time that Uranus is in Taurus with eclipses in Scorpio Taurus. Yeah. Oh, that's going to be interesting. Yeah.
So stay tuned. I think it's gonna, there aren't any more exact hits of the Saturn Uranus square after we get out of 2021. There is one in the very beginning of Capricorn season on Christmas Eve. They get really, really close. They get into the same degree, but not to the arc minute in 2022. But that's it. The square is going to be activated by the eclipses. Yeah. So more fixed sign stuff, fixed sign risings out there. Just keep checking on your buddies.
Yeah. How are you feeling this eclipse with your Aquarius rising?
Well, it's the first eclipse in my whole sign 4th and 10th houses. And that's really exciting for me. I'm really excited to get to kind of dedicate myself to that axis for the next 2.5 years. My progressed moon just moved into Scorpio, into my 10th house. So just really feeling a lot of the 10th house attention. And I think, the 10th house being our career and our life's work, and how maybe in the past I've been, my insecurities have made that a terrifying house. I think, I have Pluto there, it's Scorpio. But I think on the coming out of my Saturn return, I'm much more able to be honest with myself and kind of look at those insecurities, and also just kind of like get them in the car and have them buckle their seatbelts and like, okay, we're going, like, we're not doing this just because we're afraid. So
Yeah, I really resonate with that as well. I mean, Scorpio is my 11th house whole sign, but I also have my midheaven in Scorpio. So it pulls some of that into
yeah,
this for me too. Yeah.
yeah,
I'm actually feeling the 10th, 4th polarity right now, currently in my life, kind of more than the 11th, 5th, I would say.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think yeah, and I think we can kind of see that in the collective in terms of like, I think all the issues with the job market, we'll see a lot in the Scorpio Taurus
Mm-hmm.
development, and like how much of our power we consent to give up for how much money we're getting paid, and a whole shift
Mm.
in that. And the ways that we're controlled by wages and health insurance, and like all of these things that have kind of come into that, and how the pandemic has really changed a lot of people's calculations about
Mm.
that, about
Mm.
what's
How you
worth it.
spend your energy and how you're paid, I guess,
Yeah.
to put it like, yeah.
Yeah. I think, questions of like what we're worth and what things cost.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just money anymore. We're realizing the cost of climate change, and
Right.
the cost of what these jobs that don't support our families and don't support us in our different roles as caretakers and parents and partners, and yeah, what that does to our nervous systems and our bodies and our connections with our world and our fragmented communities. And so yeah, this has been a long kind of open to this topic, but I think, as we said, right, Sagittarius season is such a vessel of these larger storylines. So, and I think we talked about the eclipses, we've talked about, we've mentioned kind of that we're building towards that third and final exact Saturn Uranus square, which I think we'll just see the kind of mounting tensions. I feel like that has been talked about so much this year. But I think it's important to like also have that in your peripheral vision. And then also noticing we're in the pre-shadow of Venus retrograde. And so Venus will station retrograde on December 19th. And she will be retrograde until January 29th. So this is a storyline that extends beyond Sagittarius season. But at this point, she went into her shadow on November 16th at the very end of Scorpio season. And what she's doing is collecting topics that she's going to address, or that we are going to have to visit and address. And so I think that's also kind of helpful to know that is in the backdrop, because we'll see, her conjunctions with Pluto and her trines with Uranus and stuff start happening. So yeah, so I think we've kind of given the broad overview. Shall we jump into the transit by transit?
Sure, let's do it.
Kind of go faster. Yeah, so we have the sun in Sagittarius. And then Mercury enters Sagittarius kind of right on its heels, just a couple days later. And so why don't you, Sagittarius Queen, give us, your quick archetypal, I don't know, keywords for Sagittarius.
Yeah. Sagittarius is the adventurer, the explorer, but I often see it's not necessarily like, traveling the world. It's like traveling through your mind. You can travel, Sag loves to travel through different realms, different, foreign places in whatever way. For me, I guess it is more through the psyche with my Sag sun or my Sag stellium in the 12th house. Loves to make meaning. It's like needs to find truth, like to live, basically. It's like there's no point if there's not meaning in what we're doing. Yeah
I kind of like end up comparing it to Aquarius a lot in the sense of needing to find truth, but I think right, saying meaning gives the particular Sagittarius flavor to it, because Aquarius can kind of be completely impersonal in the truth that they're finding.
Objective truth, rather than like Sag can look at it from like a subjective artistic kind of truth making or meaning making. Yeah.
Yeah. And in a way of like, right, Sag being a fire sign in a way that brings them alive, that brings all of our Sagittarius placements alive, the thrill of seeking and finding. Yeah, the gorgeous hide and seek game of the psyche. Yeah, so I have this theory about Sagittarius season that because it always falls basically in the holiday season, right? Usually between the span of Thanksgiving and Christmas, that depending on where Sagittarius is in your chart and where Jupiter, its ruler, is, and kind of like if they're in happier and more supported houses or not, that's how you feel about the holiday season. I have Sag in my 11th house and Jupiter in my 7th, and I love the holiday season. I love buying presents for people. I love connecting with people around food. Yeah.
Yeah. That tracks. Yeah, with the 12th house can bring up some yeah, I've had a complicated, I think, relationship with the holiday season more so.
And I think lots of people do. Yeah. But anyway, let us know in the comments where Sag falls in your chart and how you feel about the holiday season, and we'll see if my theory is right or not. Okay, so we've got the sun into Sag, we've got Mercury into Sag. Mercury in Sagittarius, I find they've got it has big ideas and often doesn't want to share them with you. They're kind of like off on their own adventure, and they like if you want to get someplace really quickly, it's kind of inconvenient to like have to explain everything that you're doing.
I can see that. Less about like keeping it a secret, more just like, I don't have time to explain it. Like, I gotta go.
Yeah. I remember one time I dated someone for many years who had Mercury and Sag. And I remember asking him, I was like, I just want to know, like, I want to know your inner life. I want to know your process. And he was just like, that would take way too long. I would have to slow down my thoughts way too much in order to do that. And basically like, no, that is, sorry. But it was about the speed. It wasn't about like, no, I'm not going to tell you. It was just like, that would take way too long. So yeah. And then, I was thinking it's funny because we have kind of Mercury of commerce and conversations and ideas and the way they're shared on the South Node on Thanksgiving. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, is Zoom gonna go down on Thanksgiving when everyone's trying to Zoom with their families, or are we gonna have like really tense nobody talk about vaccine rules at Thanksgiving dinner, or right? What does it mean for Mercury to be kind of
tied up,
limited in some way?
Yeah. I mean, that feels right on, right? It feels like it's just so polarized that like there's nothing that is really safe territory these days.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting, kind of see how that tracks. And then, so that's Thanksgiving, the 25th. On the 28th, we have Mercury conjoining the Sun. and what Mercury's direct conjoining the sun, which means we are halfway in between Mercury retrogrades, which just feels like, whoa, that was fast.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so Mercury's moving very, very quickly, conjunct the sun. Oh, the one other thing I wanted to say about Mercury on the South Node, in the sense that Mercury represents commerce and kind of trade in the marketplace, I was wondering what the effect on Black Friday, Mercury being on the South Node, would be. And right, we've got all these interruptions in the supply chain and stuff. So I wonder if we're going to see that impact, like maybe having a record low Black Friday or something.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah. Okay. And then we move into December real quick. We've got a trine between Mars and Neptune on Monday the 29th. And then yeah, do you have anything that you want to say about that?
Mars trine Neptune.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be Mars in Scorpio, trine Neptune in Pisces, right? So I feel like we've had, oh, I guess not. We haven't had that yet this year. Yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I think, I've been thinking about the elementally, like I've been thinking a lot about the signs elementally and just like how much water that is. I also think, right, I mean, Mars in Pisces has a tendency to kind of weaponize the imagination. So I would just kind of, right, like kind of watch yourself on this day, because that, Neptune can bring the dream, but it can also bring the nightmare. Kind of depends on what's activating it. And Mars in Scorpio, I mean, maybe is digging to find the redeeming truths, but usually it's a little bit more for the dark stuff. So just watch yourself in your relationships and with making assumptions really fast, especially with Mercury conjoining the sun and Sag, jumping to conclusions from these kind of emotional places.
Yeah, it could also just be really activating of that Neptunian fantasy life and a lot of creativity coming out of it too.
Yeah. Especially because Neptune is stationing, right? So it's just kind of like emphasizing that place. Neptune is going to station direct on December 1st, just a couple days after that. And so,
yeah, it feels more like an activation then, right? If Neptune is stationing, it's prominent, and then Mars in Scorpio is really powerful and kind of, I feel like that feels really activating for that Piscean Neptunian zone of your chart.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we'll keep an eye on that. Normally I don't spend too many time talking about sextiles in these forecast videos, but I felt like just because they're nice. Sometimes they like tickle something into activation, but generally people don't need to be like, like thinking about sextiles that are about to happen. But I did think it was interesting on the 30th that we get Mercury sextile Saturn and the sun sextile Saturn, which makes sense. Mercury and the sun are very close together. And we also have Venus sextile Neptune. So we're getting that Neptune activation. But we also have, these more kind of organizing archetypes with the sun and with Mercury being able to plan stuff out, getting a little bit of kind of grounding or context or practicality from that sextile.
That looks like a nice day to kind of like plan for your future even. like the imagination of like new visions coming in, and then also the Saturn help of being able to execute it in reality. Yeah, that looks like a nice day to mark on the calendar.
Yeah, and we'll be kind of through Thanksgiving, looking at the last month of the year. Yeah, and still in eclipse season in between the eclipses. So, I mean, that's just so potent in terms of download time of like where you are and where you're going.
Yeah.
Cool. So then we kind of, the rest of that week is a little bit quiet. The moon will be in Scorpio, moving into Sag. And then on Saturday, the 4th, we have our final solar south node eclipse at 12 degrees of Sagittarius. And I just want to remind everyone that day I am holding a broom making workshop to kind of, not so much to ritualize the eclipse, because you don't want to do that on eclipses, but it just seems like it's our very last eclipse. It's on the south node. Brooms are about clearing spaces. I love that they are both magical and useful. It's like there's, Venus in Capricorn really likes brooms.
Yeah, it's so like, it reminds me of you because it's like such a Virgo witch tool, right? Yeah, I love the workshop. I can't wait for that. I think that's like, it's just so brilliant and beautiful.
Thanks. Yeah. It's funny when I like watch the videos and they're like, don't actually use your broom to like sweep stuff up when you're doing magic. And I'm like, I will definitely be using my broom actually. Like, I don't need like, the Virgo being like, I don't need like this broom that can't touch the floor. What is the point of that? No, things are beautiful because they are useful. And because they are handmade, and because they are infused with your own magic, and because, right, I've been, both my grandmothers recently passed away, and I inherited a lot of their jewelry, and I've been putting it in the brooms, and it just feels like, this way to like basically turn this like tchotchkes into ancestral tools that honor your home.
That's really beautiful. I love that.
Yeah,
into like weaving it into a little spell.
Yeah. Good spell makers. So I know some of you have reached out and said you can't make this one and are asking me to do another one. I'll figure out sometime maybe when that works, but I don't have it on the books yet. So if you can make this one, definitely. I'd love to see you there. So this final eclipse in Sag, I feel like we've talked about a little bit. I feel like the eclipse cycle in Sagittarius and Gemini ended up being really Sagittarius heavy. We only had one solar eclipse in Gemini in that whole cycle. We had I think we only had one lunar eclipse in Gemini in that whole cycle, but we've had like 3 Sag lunar eclipses and 2 Sag solar eclipses. So definitely, though the nodes are straddling that polarity, it's been a lot more about Sag.
Yeah, and emphasis on the clearing out too with the south node.
Yeah, and so wherever Sagittarius falls in your chart has been receiving this like lots and lots of clearing out. Do you have any kind of stories of how that has shown up for you, or in clients' charts, or just?
For me, it's in my 12th house, and I've been doing a lot of just deep unconscious reprogramming, if you will, right? A lot of like almost past life karmic stuff too. A lot of clearing in that zone, but it's also been really affirming to my Sag placements, in that it's like I believe that we're most equipped to heal in others what we've healed in ourselves. So it's like this is very much my work, I think, is that deep unconscious healing. So I've been in that, but it's been good training ground, I think, for my work.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like when we just kind of, when we can reach this level of tolerance that we can look at ourselves honestly, it's so terrifying, and you gain so much self-respect so fast in that space, you know, all that sense of like wanting to feel self-assured that we go looking for in avoidance of that space.
Yeah, I am excited though for the nodes to shift, like the north node to go into my fifth. That sounds really nice for a change.
Yeah, I'm just wrapping up the north node in my fifth, and right, the fifth house being the place of children. I had my child with the north node in the fifth, and yeah, it's been very creative. I am ready for it to leave. I think Gemini in my fifth, you know, I have 25,000 hobbies.
Yeah.
Kind of ready to be like, okay, let's go into Taurus and simplify things down a little bit.
Yeah, I'm ready to like garden and like ground into that kind of hobby, and yeah, just I'm feeling really drawn to, and I mean it's like my home too, so it's that I see in Taurus is like also feeling that into it.
Yeah. Yeah. So let us know kind of where Sagittarius falls, which storylines you're wrapping up. For me, the South Node moving through my 11th house has been recognizing a lot of kind of patterns in my friendships and my relationships, and maybe, you know, a lot of questions that I haven't asked about kind of like my own behavior and how to connect with people and what to connect with people around, and boundaries, and kind of all of that. And then also, since Uranus moved into Taurus, into my fourth house in 2018, I have moved so many times and lived in so many states. Coming to the end of the South Node in my 11th house of community, and realizing how I don't like how much I want a community. Realizing like, oh, okay, I've now moved around so much that even my original community, I'm kind of feel separated from, and ready to kind of stick my roots into that North Node and Taurus, and build that again.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay. Then kind of the next thing on my list, on Tuesday the 7th, we have Mars square Jupiter and Mercury square Neptune, perfecting on the same day. And this one to me feels like we're coming down from eclipse season. I don't count eclipse season as being over until we get our first uneclipsed lunation, which will be the Gemini full moon later in the month. But I also don't think that, I think that the most potent time of eclipse season is between the two eclipses. So this is kind of like the like falling action. And when we've got Mercury trine Neptune, especially in Jupiter's signs, we can be kind of enchanted by will-o'-the-wisps and be led astray, or deeply inspired. But right, those two things are often kind of co-occurring. And then Mars square Jupiter can get overblown as well.
Yeah, this feels a bit chaotic this day, a bit confusing.
Yeah, we'll be in kind of right that December 4th eclipse is a solar eclipse. It's a new moon. So we've got this waxing moon energy, and it's almost like kapows right out of itself.
Yeah. Like wanting to move, wanting to do something, but also having some kind of like confusion, it feels like.
Right. And the moon is going to be conjunct Saturn as that's happening. And so it's like, we're tired, or it seems impractical. We can't quite fit our vision into how it's going to look in our lives. And that's okay, because, right, as humans, we have time. Like, just because you have the vision and it doesn't seem to line up with where your life is right now does not mean it's wrong.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, right? Like, beautiful things that last take time. But this feels like an impatient day.
Yeah, impatient. Yeah, that's a good word for it.
Yeah, and so that will be kind of resolving for the rest of that week. That weekend, Saturday the 11th, we have Venus's first conjunction with Pluto. And we have the Sun square Neptune, but I kind of want to talk about them separately. Yeah, so what comes to mind when you think about Venus-Pluto combinations?
I like Venus-Pluto combinations. Just really, I mean, a lot of intensity on a relational level, which can feel all-consuming. Pluto like really amplifies that desire to connect. So it can feel all-consuming, and it can feel dramatic. I mean, like growing up, I would always look forward to Venus conjunct Pluto, like as a teen, because I'd be like, it's gonna make me feel all the feelings, like, that like just obsession with a crush or whatever. I used to live for that. Yeah, Pluto's in my first house too, in this Venus, and Venus as well. So, I mean, the retrograde is like, it stations direct, like a degree from my ascendant. So I'm staying tuned with what that's going to bring.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's so important to bring up the retrograde, because this is such a key feature of the retrograde, is Pluto's presence. Because she is stationing basically at this point. I mean, they form their conjunction on December 11th at 25 degrees, and she's going to station at 26. So about a week later on the 19th. So they're really kind of in this conjunction.
Yeah.
For a while. Yeah. And I think that intensity, I'm also just so interested to see how it shows up in Capricorn. Because Capricorn wants to take on things that are really overwhelming and just like, right, like use time and diligence to accomplish them. And so, right, it's not quite the like, I imagine it could be so much more emotionally overwhelming if it were occurring in a water sign, or the passion of a fire sign. It's really interesting to think about these in terms of the earth, and then also how well it kind of lines up with the myth, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's
when Hades goes to get Persephone, he pulls her down into the earth. He opens up the earth.
Yeah.
Goes down into the earth.
It's like literal Persephone's myth happening. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I also have a workshop that begins this day with my friend Anya Katz from A Millennial's Guide to Saving the World podcast. We both love Venus retrogrades, and so We want to dive into those juicy myths and help people kind of create a personal and group container for our experience. So we're going to meet once a month, once in the pre-shadow, once at the Cazimi where Venus conjoins the sun in the middle of her retrograde, and then once she goes direct. And this is the first one, which we wanted to kind of honor the depth of Venus conjunct Pluto.
Yeah, it's Inanna's descent right there that day into the underworld. And I love what you said in your weekly check-in video about the crone's expression of desire being gratitude. I love that so much. And I mean, that's like with Venus as the evening star in that crone phase, but also Capricorn is like the elder too, right?
Yeah.
Venus Capricorn, yeah, is the
right.
crone.
Yeah, and there's something so different, right, about like when death is taking like a youthful like maiden forms, that's tragic.
Right.
But right when the crone is ready to meet death, right? Like she's meeting it with that gratitude, with that desire.
Yes.
I'm getting tingles in my body so hard it kind of hurts.
Yeah, tingles. Yeah, Venus is ready to venture into the underworld at this point. She wants to, you know, it's like for that Inanna's rebirth.
Yeah. And right. So if you're unfamiliar with Inanna is a Sumerian goddess, and she has a myth of kind of being at the peak of her power and then having a descent to the underworld and having to shed all of her kind of magical clothing and all of her power and get trapped and be dead in the underworld for a while and be kind of rotting in the underworld with her dark twin and coming back up again. But right, there's this kind of this point where when we're rounding out our experience of kind of a segment of our desire. Oh, am I getting too heady here? There's a time to go dip into those underworld juices, into the shadow, right? When we're talking about purging the shadow, it's also a deep kind of revival process. Right? If we bury dead things, they create soil fertility.
Yeah. And the wisdom, it feels like this Venus in Capricorn has that wisdom to know it's time to die and be reborn.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's maybe helping me with this other piece of the sun square Neptune, because Neptune is a really powerful archetype for helping us to let go. And normally we don't think of Neptune, or at least I don't think of Neptune like that. I think of Neptune as kind of this imagination cloud that I like feel lost inside of, but it also is very creative.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about like grief and how that brings in, it's like, or even trauma, where it kind of pulls you into that imaginal realm, where it's like, if this pain, like Neptune, when there's a pain that's too much, it kind of can capture you away from it in a sense.
Yeah, right. It dissolves the boundaries of kind of what you think you are. And that lets in a lot of new stuff.
Right. Yeah. I'm thinking of, I like can't quite articulate it, but something about like grief and letting go and like it bringing in this kind of like heavenly energy into your field.
Yeah. My husband is a fish biologist, but that means he works a lot with like rivers and river flows. And he talks so much about, what we've done in a lot of like when we've turned, wetlands into farmland and stuff, we've restricted the flow of the river, but actually floods historically have brought so much fertility, and they're actually really good for the land. And it's really it's really nourishing to have a flood, even though it kind of washes things away. It's only problematic when we've decided like this form has to stay here forever, right? Not to be callous about people's homes and people's livelihoods, but yeah,
the regenerative properties of that.
Yeah. And that's kind of, I think we're talking about how this could be a really beautiful transit. I think this could also be really painful, right? Because when we're not ready to let go and we don't think that we're letting go, Venus conjunct Pluto and the Sun square Neptune are ripping things out of our hands. And often at the pre-shadow of the retrograde, we're maybe not as tuned into what is ripe to let go of.
Yeah. It feels like a need to surrender to what is being taken away and trust that it's the right time for that death cycle. Yeah.
Whew. It's a time.
Yeah.
Okay. And pretty quickly after that, Monday, we have 2 ingresses. Mars moves into Sag and Mercury moves into Capricorn. And that, yeah, I mean, it's almost like, I think maybe this is where the Venus's retrograde will start to feel real, because we kind of have our thinker, our perceiver, our idea, right? Like, we might have the experience over the weekend with that Venus conjunct Pluto of like, whoa. And then Mercury moving into Capricorn, into being in a co-presence with the 2 of them, is kind of like, oh, okay, this is what this is going to be about.
Right. Get some clarity about what's happening. Mental clarity. Yeah.
And then Mars moving into Sag, I've really loved this Mars in Scorpio. I think it has so much energy and there's so much potency. I'm really, really vibing with Mars in Scorpio, but Mars in Sag is maybe equally as serious, but a lot more fun. That makes sense, right? There's not that kind of the somberness that Scorpio can have.
Yeah, very energetic, the Mars and Sagittarius.
Yeah. And I feel like it was maybe Austin Coppock called Mars and Sag the happy heretic. And I love that line. It's just like so Mars joins the Sag party, Mercury moves on to Capricorn. Then, right, as with all things going through, entering Sag, on Wednesday, we have Mars conjoin the South Node in Sag. So I think we kind of, they kind of sneak in the back door of Sagittarius because the South Node is right there. And I feel like we don't totally feel them until they've kind of moved through that transit.
Yeah. The entrance into Sagittarius has a really muted quality this year, as you said.
Yeah. And then, that's kind of the big news for that week until that Sunday when we get Venus stationing retrograde at 26.5 degrees of Capricorn. Oh, sorry, I totally skipped over the full moon the day before that. Okay, the full moon on the 18th. And then, sorry, I'm totally wrapped up in Venus land right now. We have a full moon in Gemini that brings us to the end of eclipse season, right? It's the first uneclipsed Gemini full moon we've had in 2 years, I think, since the 2019 Gemini full moon. So yeah, it's been, yeah, it's the first kind of pure one that's going to be busy, right? I mean, this time of year is always busy for people, right? We're talking about the week before Christmas.
Right. Yeah. Just full moon vibes. Yeah.
Yeah. Full moon vibes. Hopefully people are getting to connect, and hopefully the kind of traveling is working. I'm feeling like, yeah, Christmas is so intense and there's so many astrological shifts around there. It's kind of like, just stay in your neighborhood, you know, like trade cookies with your neighbors. Don't fly across the country, not because of like COVID or whatever necessarily, but because we've got Venus going retrograde, the third and final Saturn Uranus square. That's not final because we still have to deal with that charge for a whole year. We've got the nodes changing signs. We've got Jupiter changing signs. It's just a lot of stuff. And it just sounds so exhausting to be traveling at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've got that full moon. It's not, you know, it's not hugely, it's in like a very, very loose square to Neptune. Not really. It's in a trine with Jupiter, which is nice. Yeah, it's not a super complicated lunation. And I feel like it's the first one in a long time that we've had not a super complicated lunation. Yeah, because I mean, I feel like you can go all the way back to the Pisces full moon at the end of September, and that was maybe the nicest one, because the lunations in Libra season were both all up in Mars's business, and then we had a very Uranian Scorpio full moon, and then we've had eclipses for the last two. So you know, it's like it's almost a quarter of the year since we've had one. So hopefully it'll be nice.
Yeah, it seems like the time of year that it's good that it's uncomplicated too. There would be too much going on, right?
And then, okay, then we have Venus station retrograde. And so when Venus goes retrograde, she is, like we said, she's being pulled into the underworld. She's shedding her power. She's shedding her desires. She's through this cycle of, right, in her maiden phase, desiring things, in her mother phase, nurturing them, managing them, taking care of them, in her crone phase, making meaning, feeling gratitude, sharing her wisdom. And here she is kind of on at the end of her crone phase as the kind of peak evening star. You can see her. She's gorgeous. She's super bright right now because she's getting as far away from the sun as she ever gets. And then she falls to be reborn in the heart of the sun. And so this is what we have. Yeah, if you want to connect with kind of what might be showing up for you, Venus goes retrograde in the same place roughly every 8 years. So December 2013 through January 2014, she was retrograde in Capricorn as well. So if you remember that time, you can kind of go back and connect with those themes. Yeah, for me, when I realized this story, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most literal Venus in Capricorn retrograde story. I was working an unpaid internship and a job where I was making barely any money. This was my first year out of college. And I had worked, I think it was like 3 months without a full day off. And then when she went retrograde, I I obviously needed to evaluate my relationship with work. And it was on her Kazemi with the sun. So when in the midpoint of the retrograde cycle, she conjoins the sun, and she's reborn. And often there's insight around that, around what you truly desire. And it was on the day of the Kazemi, I interviewed for my first farming job. And then in true retrograde fashion, I was offered the job. I said no. And when Venus left her post shadow, they were still hiring for that position. And I called them up and said that I would take it, which started me off on a whole career of farming, which was really lovely and really supportive. But I was in the middle of the questions of what is my relationship with work and what do I really care about? And what I really cared about was food. So.
Yeah. I was living in New York City, which was very much my like living out Persephone's time. Life, like that loss of innocence, maturing into out of that naive maiden phase. Yeah.
Yeah, and she went retrograde in your first house.
In my first house, yeah.
Yeah, around your kind of self-concept and yeah.
Pluto was there too at the time.
Yeah.
Pluto was Capricorn.
Yeah. Might have been tied up, I think, more in the direct station degree than the retrograde station.
Yeah, I don't remember the details of it. I just remember it was in Capricorn as well.
Yeah, it would have been in Capricorn. Pluto went in Capricorn in 2008, I think. So, yeah. And that pretty much brings us to the end. We have a trine on Monday the 20th between Mercury and Uranus. I like it. I like Mercury Uranus contact. I think that Mercury is maybe, if I was going to pick one of the personal planets to be kind of like have the easiest time with Uranus.
Totally. Yeah.
Because Uranus is often, it's so much about mental stuff and ideas. Right? It's like, it's all of the kind of instability and stuff it creates is to kind of get you to a realization. I mean, I won't speak for Uranus's intention. I would not presume to do that. But so often, right, it's like these sudden breakdowns or breakthroughs are usually have something to do with happening with our mental clarity.
Yeah.
And with them both in earth signs, it just feels like, okay, what are we going to do about this? And their kind of trines are so solution focused, I feel like. So, they're on the same team trying to find innovative solutions to what's going down.
Yeah. Mercury Uranus is always like that flash of insight, this like idea that comes through.
Yeah. And it's on the longest night of the year. So really potent time for kind of inward journeys.
Yes. Yeah.
And we have the solstice, and on Tuesday, the 21st, the sun goes into Capricorn, and that Capricorn season has many stories as well. I will be back here in a month to talk about them. So is there anything else that you want to mention before we wrap up?
No, this was fun. Thanks for having me to chat.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And you guys, please, reach out and look at Melissa's work. She does write-ups, she does astrology readings, and I will kind of put all of her details in the descriptions for all of this. And
I'm not huge on Instagram. Like it's hard for me to to do. So I haven't been active for a while. I'm not very active, but yeah, you can find me there and DM about readings if you're curious about that.
Yeah. And I'm not sure how you feel about this. I love giving readings during eclipse season because there's just something so juicy and deep about it's just easier to kind of touch into that more like soul space. I find.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, my readings are very like nodal focused anyways. So yeah, the theme of the nodes of the moon really strong during eclipse season. Yeah.
Well, cool. Thank you so much for hanging out with
Whitney.
us and sharing your astro wisdom. And
yeah, it was good to see you.
Yeah, we'll have you on again
Cool.
sometime.